Hello, Ray. Okay, you're here. She was the one who created
papers, we are
Wherever I see it, there's a photo of Julie.
Yeah, it was a GoFundMe. Doesn't get asked. Yeah. Do you want a chair?
I've got a chair. I'm not fast right now.
So is it what guard?
Hey!
Oh, right, okay. Did you want to sign this? This is a letter from Douglas Scott Morrison tomorrow saying last chance to do the right thing. G'day. That's Stephen. Did you want to sign this as a letter for Scott Morrison going tomorrow? It's his last chance to do the right thing.
Did she give?
Were you waiting for anybody else? Or, are you a friend? Oh, right, okay.
I thought you would have gone.
Hello, do you want to sign this as a letter going to Scott Morrison tomorrow saying Scott did the right thing? Last chance to let Julian go.
So British welcome. Thank you. Kirsty, did you want to sign?
Yeah, would you like to sign the letter going to Scott Morrison?
Hello, John.
Yes, if you want to sign that. Thank you. And it's a letter for everybody. Oh, did you want to sign this petition? This is the letter going to Scott Morrison saying last chance. Get your act together and do the right thing. So this is John Shipton here as well. Julian's dad. This is the letter going to Scott Morrison tomorrow saying this is last chance to do the right thing. Thank you.
Ciao Maria, buonasera. Sto bene. Sì, no, non l'ho vista. Sui c'è là, sta parlando con Tara Cleary, you are amazing. You are. All power to you, Tara Cleary. Free Julian Assange. Forward to the World Socialist Revolution. Love you, Tara. Hello. Yeah. So Citizens Party have got a candidate here then? Is it you? Oh, fantastic. What's your name?
It's 6:30. Yeah.
This is a letter for Scott Morrison.
I'll have to.
Oh, okay.
Everyone.
It's a great atmosphere in here, John.
So we're on the
Very exciting night tonight, and really, really thrilled to see so many people bringing their family and friends along as well. We expected about 80 to 100 people, so I think we've got about that, which is just brilliant. It's a great show locally for Cunningham or wherever you might be from, in support of freeing Julian Assange. We've got John Shipton here with us this evening. I'm not sure if he's in the studio, if we can have a bit of a wave, or he might be sitting outside. But you can only imagine the journey that this man must have gone through on behalf of his son. So for the people that signed this petition, this is a letter going to Scott Morrison tomorrow, and that is a request for him to do the right thing. He has an opportunity, as we all do now, over only the next few days, and I don't know if you can imagine for your children, like I think about our children, having only a few days to mobilise as many Australians as we can to say only we the people can now free Julian Assange. There is a moment in time that comes up in the next few days that Julian is between the judicial system, which we can't really influence, and the political system, which is the one that we can. So in gratitude for everyone that signed this, and you're welcome to afterwards if you didn't get a chance to do so. If you left a phone number, then we'll text tomorrow the numbers that you, as a private citizen, can call to simply request Scott Morrison's office, Albanese, etc., etc. There's 5 key people in Australia that can make this happen, and if they get hammered with phone calls over the next few days, as we have been hammering them for weeks now, through mobilising, through Steve, who is being very consistent for years, every Friday and Saturday going up to Sydney, standing on the steps, trying to explain to people the importance of what Julian stands for, which is freedom for all of us. So when we talk about the freedom movement, it is time to move, pick up the phone, have the courage to make those phone calls, because that is your stand on behalf of your freedom, generations of freedom to come, but most importantly in this circumstance, the iconic situation of Julian Assange. So I'd like to thank everyone here, because there are many people that have been very active on his behalf for years. He's been held without charge for 10 years, which is just completely outrageous. He didn't even create the material himself, he was merely the conduit. And the people that gave him the material have already done their time. So you have to remember that it's much bigger than just one person, isn't it really? It's notional for what's happening in our country completely. So my name's Alexis Garneau-Miller. I am the federal candidate for Cunningham for the Citizens Party. We've done lots of work over the last few years to raise Australians' awareness, but more importantly to mobilise them, to get them to participate in the democratic process, because you can make a difference, but only action makes the difference. So with love for all of you, especially at this time of the year, no matter what it is that your beliefs are, what we deeply hold within ourselves is the belief that we all deserve freedom, and so does Julian too. So thank you for being here this evening. We'll do a Q&A with John Shipton, his father, afterwards, and let's enjoy the movie. Thank you.
Hello, testing. This is my name is Matt Sinclair. I'm helping John out with the Q&A today. I'm just going to have a little chat, and then I'll walk around, and anyone that's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to put them to John. First, I think I want to just thank everyone who helped put this on today, especially Steve. Did a wonderful job. There is Steve. Hey, there you go, Steve. And it's been a really good turnout, especially for end of a holiday evening. My impressions of the film, you're a strong man, John. You know, this is the most serious stuff, and your son is, well, the definition of a hero. You know, like he sacrificed everything for all our sakes, and for the sakes of our Western democracies. basically. And it's all in all our interests that he gets out of jail. And hopefully this is, I think the grand opening of the film is in a couple of days.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's going really well, and from this turnout, I think things bode well for the future. My personal, I've been speaking to a few people just around town there, and it seems to me that the character assassination on Julian has run its course. And I think people, with all the troubles that are going on in the world, are starting to appreciate just what he did and how we need him, and more and more people like him. So yeah, just a quick question. I was just wondering, how are you going? You've been on the road now for a number of years.
I'm okay. You know, often I'm asked that question, and then I always contemplate the difficulty of answering it. I'm all right. I'm here talking to you guys, which is not a burden. It's a pleasure, you know, to see such support. But then I always reflect on Julian, who's in a cell about that big, with a toilet there and a slot window, and he looks out and he can see the sky through barbed wire, and that's been 3 years now, and a total of 14 years. So, yeah, so I'm all right, but he's not so good, yeah.
And you're on a bit of a journey, so this is your second night?
Yeah, we've done a few now. Actually, I was just thinking today, Rain asked me something. I was thinking of Rain is over there. She's
there we go. Rain's coming out as well.
Rain asked me today. I think we've been on every continent except Antarctica, and this is the start of a journey with this film. We take it on the road because nowadays, you know, film distribution is sort of locked up and regionalised and very hard to get into. So it's a real pleasure to take the film on the road and come and see those people who, you know, are going to give support or have given support or may give support in the future.
I've got a book here, The Trial of Julian Assange. Can you tell us about this book?
This is, so there's a famous book called J'accuse by Emile Zola. It's about the Dreyfus case, I Accuse. Well, this book here by Niels Melzer. Professor Niels Melzer is Professor of International Law at Glasgow University. He's now, he was then, when he wrote this book, the United Nations Rapporteur on Torture and Unusual Punishment. And he reviewed Julian in the Belmarsh prison back in 2019 and produced a report. Now, that caused him to spend some considerable time considering all aspects of Julian's case, and he assembled them into this book. There's a publication in German, and this is the publication in English. I advise you to have a bit of a look, and you'll be able to answer any question and fill out what the actual distortions of due process, the irregularities of administration of law, and the fabrications of evidence, the smearing of Julian's name, the mobbing, and the deliberate incarceration of Julian Assange for 14 years. And this Niels Melzer describes the interior of those 14 long years. And he describes them as psychological torture. The exterior, that's the 14 years in itself, is described and condemned by the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, which produced their report in February 2018. The second report, the first one, came out, to which the United Kingdom objected, And consequently, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention produced another report in February 2018, further in stronger language, insisting that Julian was arbitrarily detained, ought to be freed, and paid compensation by Sweden and the United Kingdom. So here it is. They're downstairs.
I think we might throw it open to the floor now. Has anyone got any questions? If you put your hand up, I'll run up and chuck a microphone at you. Yeah, I'll cruise around.
You can ask me anything, really. Have a go. There's lots to tell.
My question's probably to do with misinformation that we've been given about many other things since Julian has been kept locked up, and I suppose the inability of having documents released or having the full set of information, and more importantly, the way I suppose media is very cunning in the way that it just changes the topic. So, you know, we go from, you know, talking about Julian and freedom of press to, and I'm going to use a very controversial topic right now, which is, you know, a medical experiment on the human population, and then changing that topic to the Ukraine. And while we've started talking about the Ukraine, all of a sudden there's also, if you're looking at other media outlets, they're talking about exactly what Julian has exposed them for 14 years ago, or longer than that, really. And they're reiterating his words, but not releasing him, in a sense. So do you feel like sometimes you're in a hamster wheel and things seem to roll around and it looks the same even though the messaging is different?
Well, you know, from anybody's detached perspective, Julian Assange has been the benefit of a Niagara of malice, or a deluge of malice, you know, grotesque contortions of law. And my job and our job, we can only do one thing at a time. So, you know, he's an Australian citizen, he's one of us, he grew up here. So our job is to bring him home here and give him a chance to heal and succour and look after his kids, or play with them and be companion to his new wife. That's our job. The other tasks that you described lay before us, but presently, if you forgive me, I'll just have a go at getting him home. Now, in the positive, I can describe three things to you. There's 95,000 cables in the cable set. There are, I think, 217,000 in the Iraq war files, and hundreds of thousands in the Afghan war logs, and the complete Guantanamo Bay files. They are the foundations of the charges that Julian has faced with the United States. Julian, as you know, is an Australian citizen, and he's charged with espionage of the United States while he was in the United Kingdom. And I mean, this is just absurd. He's an Australian citizen, he was in the United Kingdom, but somehow or other, because Chelsea Manning released these evidences to Julian, and Julian, among others, the New York Times, the Guardian, Der Spiegel, El País, Sydney Morning Herald, The Age, the Australian, many others, 95 partners in the distribution of the cables up until their release by Krypton, a website that specialises in secrecy, and Der Freitag. Okay. Up until that time, there were 95 media partners distributing information from the cables, Iraq war files, and Iraq war logs, and Guantanamo Bay files. One of that 95,000 concerned a small family, extended family outside Baghdad in Iraq, that the American soldiers smashed down the door and murdered everybody. All the kiddies, the mum and the dad, the extended family, grandfathers, brothers, uncles, aunties, everybody, contemplating this heinous crime. They called it an airstrike and obliterated from the earth all of the remains of that little family forever. Gone. Now this was reported in the dispatches from Baghdad, from the United States Embassy in Baghdad to the State Department. It's a classified cable. You can still read it, and all of the 95,000 you can still read on WikiLeaks to this day, to this minute. The Iraqi parliament of that destroyed nation managed, after reading this cable, to gather up its courage. A miracle, really. To gather up its courage and refuse to sign the Status of Forces Agreement. And thus, the United States and its allies had to remove their troops from Iraq. So amidst all of this, what I call deluge of malice, amidst that, the publication by WikiLeaks and Julian and Chelsea stopped a war, stopped the slaughter of people in Iraq. Number two. Again, this is in the cable set. You can look it up to this day. The Chagos Islanders, you may know it by its newer name, Diego Garcia. The Chagos Islanders were all packed up from the Chagos Islands and dumped in Mauritius. All of them, every single one. The dogs were shot, I believe. Every single one, the occupant of those islands, and dumped in Mauritius. And Diego Garcia, one of the islands, was given to the United States as an air base. That's where the B-52s fly out of to bomb this, that and the other place. The Chagos Islanders saw this cable, called upon their lawyers, and they took a case to the International Court of Justice and prevailed against the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom objected and they prevailed again. So that's 2 counts of justice. One stopped a war, one brought justice to a suffering people. Now, a third one is the Guantanamo Bay files. A great Australian lawyer, Stephen Kenny, he's down in Adelaide. He was representing David Hicks, and he used the Guantanamo Bay files to build a case, an irrefutable case, for the defence to free David Hicks. And thus David was freed. The usual sort of tricky negotiations ending up with David's return to Australia. Equally, another lawyer, Clive Stafford Smith, established an NGO called Reprieve. And he's an American, but he lives in the United Kingdom. He managed to free a British citizen. Now, part of the testimony in the Guantanamo Bay files was the torture of this man. If he will forgive me, I can't bring his name to mind. And that torture included slicing his penis with a razor blade. That is what we contemplate in that boil upon justice called Guantanamo Bay. So in those 3 cases, even though Julian has suffered greatly, what Chelsea and Julian and WikiLeaks brought to us is a great amount of opportunity to bring about justice and stop a war. Now, that's only 3 examples. And, you know, I won't call upon your indulgence to give you more. They're all there on the internet all the time. You can look them up. if you're curious about the United States ambassador to Australia, you can look that person up on the WikiLeaks, what they're called D+ files.
John, I'll just say one thing though, that the United States still occupies Iraq. And in fact, I remember about 2 years ago when, so this is very early in January 2021, I believe, the United States, so in the wake of the assassination of the Iranian general, his name was
Soleimani.
Soleimani. He was assassinated in Iraq by US forces after he received an invitation from the Iraqi government to negotiate some aspect, but the Americans intervened and they assassinated him. In the wake of that, the Iraqi government asked for a complete withdrawal of US forces from Iraq, and Mike Pompeo, who at that time was the US Secretary of State, and honestly also the one who had called for the assassination of Julian, as we found out from Michael Isikoff last year. But Mike Pompeo replied to the Iraqi government that America is not going anywhere.
You know, I'm aware of all that, and I'm aware of the unfolding of history in time. But I'm making us aware, or revealing, sorry, not we already are, making pertinent the fact of leaks and the results. That history unfolds after that, and the United States, or the Pentagon in one way or the other, attempts to keep control of Iraq, is a fact of history. But it's equally a fact of history that the leaks brought about the end of that official occupation of Iraq. A fostering of ISIS and so on, and the proxy war and the continuing occupation of certain parts, illegal occupation, is another matter. It's within the unfolding of history, and it looks as though that may end fairly soon.
Actually, John, I was just going to ask, sorry, it's Matt over here, your compere. I was just thinking, with our election coming up, how's it looking for making this an election issue? Are you getting much response from politicians?
Yes, that's great. That's a good question. We started a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, with two supporters, Peter Wish-Wilson and Andrew Wilkie, and now that's grown to 30 in the Assange Friendship Group. Well, I'll just rattle them off. In Greece, it's grown to 90 out of a parliament of 300. In Brazil, it's 100 parliamentarians supporting. In Chile and Argentina, Assange Friendships groups. In Mexico, an Assange Friendship group, and the president of Mexico, Obrador, has called on the United States to release Julian. In France, the National Assembly debated for an hour. That National Assembly, the French National Assembly, debated for an hour whether to extend Julian asylum in France. There's a cross-party group in the Bundestag, another cross-party group in the Norwegian Parliament, another cross-party group in the United Kingdom, and so on. So when I describe those parliamentarians, they rest upon our shoulders. That is the tip of the iceberg. And they don't do anything without an upwelling of support in the community. That's their job, to listen to us in one way or another and take our concerns into Parliament. Having said that, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, while in Washington, made a public statement, which you may have heard, that if Julian has done something wrong in the United Kingdom, charge him. Other than that, send him home. That is the Deputy Prime Minister.
Common sense, the first time of being any common sense.
Yeah.
But can't they just request him to come home? I mean, can't the Australian government then... So that was one of the questions I also want to ask was, like, the Australian government should have the power to say we want our citizens back on our own soil.
Yes, they do have that power.
So why hasn't that been enacted? And who can we hold, I'd like to say, who can we hold accountable and go after that individual, that department, whatever it might be, to, you know, bring him home?
Well, you know, the first stop is your local member. And the second stop is the candidate forums. And that'll happen right around Australia. It must, you can't go to the top, you know.
Oh, no,
You can't, we can't
I
sort
don't
of...
think the top end is held accountable. It's more the bureaucrats in between that we need to try to get a hold of to get...
Well, they'll only respond to political pressure from an upwelling. Unless, of course, you know, somebody releases a you know, a
Right, yeah, was there any more questions? We might have to wrap it up a little bit soon. Did you want to ask?
Just yell it out. So, the Australian government has been so quiet about it, we've got an election coming up. Do you think a change of government would be of any benefit to Assange's clients?
Yeah, yes, I think so. Anthony Albanese has, you know, met with me twice and made a statement in caucus that enough's enough, and there's a strong core of Labor MPs in the Assange friendship group. So yes, yeah. And particularly if we all, immediately there's a change of government, before they settle into their routines and become indoctrinated by their advisors from the bureaucracies, particularly if we hop in then, which I'll be here, and you know, we can all go to Canberra and stamp our foot.
John, is there any online support groups for Julian that are bogus, like collecting money fictitiously, or you're not sure?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I hope not. And we sift out constantly anything that's not 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And supporting, say, WikiLeaks, because I gave them a donation, I'm not sure where, would it go through to WikiLeaks?
No, it goes to Assange Campaign,
Right.
yeah,
Oh,
.org, which is our website,
Yep.
and Assange Campaign Inc., Incorporated Association, not for profit, it is the bank account.
Right, okay, good.
That's who pays for my travel. Your donations paid for my travel in the last, 8 months to meetings in Berlin, Oslo, anyway, lots of places.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, John, for your time tonight, and I wish you all the best, and especially Julian. I'd just like to know, given the situation that prevails in Australia and the difficulties that exist, for example, our government has enacted legislation that allows them to strip citizenship from anybody who has the potential citizenship of another country. Does Julian actually want to come home? Is this home? And what are his prospects in the event he doesn't? Or, you know, it's very difficult. He now has a European wife who'll have to apply to be allowed to come to Australia. The 2 children should be able to get a declaratory certificate of citizenship. but the Australian government has actually meddled in our citizenship processes to such an extent that life could still be quite difficult. And, you know, what does he want? Does he want to come to Australia?
You know, if I can say, all of the problems you have outlined are real ones, and I'd love to have him here to deal with them.
Yeah.
Thanks, John, for your time, and the documentary, I thought it was great. So that invasion into privacy, telling the story, I think, is a great way to communicate and build up that wellspring of support. Given the elections being called and the writ being delivered, is it possible to get Julian's name on the ballot paper?
We did that, and there was one senator in the Australian Senate who actually never came to Australia. And he was, I think, an appointee within the system, though, not outside the system, Lord somebody or other. And so the lawyers told us back then in 2012 that Julian was okay and could take up, could be elected and take up a seat if he became free. That's what they told us back then, yes.
So is there a plan to have him on the ballot paper?
No. I mean, Nils Melzer's description, you know, of psychological torture over a period of 14 years by 3 states, one of them being the preeminent state in the world, is serious. It's a serious evaluation, you know. And I don't think Julian has enough bandwidth to fight for his freedom in the courts of the United Kingdom and maybe the ECHR in the future, and organise to be on the ballot paper here. There is something, though, I'd like to mention is really important, is that as of Wednesday, it's no longer a legal case that goes into the hands of Priti Patel, the Minister for Justice. People tell jokes about Priti Patel. This is one of them. That she goes to visit somebody in hospital who's on life support and looks at her phone and the battery's flat. So she pulls out the life support, puts it in the phone. That's a description of the compassion of that lassie.
Well, John, I just had thought of one question I've been meaning to ask you. It seems that the English judicial system is turned against Julian. And we know going into the jaws of the crocodile is bloody scary, but at least the Americans have a First Amendment, and he seems to have a lot of friends there. Is he contemplating maybe just biting the bullet and going to fight his fight in the Dragon's Den?
No, I can answer that. I answer in 2 parts. So, as of next Wednesday, it's not it's no longer a legal case. So our government's shilly-shallying, the mantra that they offer over and over again, that the matter's before the court, ends next Wednesday for a month, as it's now a political decision of Priti Patel to extradite Julian Assange to the United States. So we can agitate our government at this time to ask them or insist that they ask for Julian to be sent back to Australia, because it's no longer a legal matter, it's directly a political matter. The second question is that the United States offered assurances. This is a sort of rough summation. This is the 14th year. There'll be another year of cases in the United Kingdom. That's a minimum, maybe 2 years. Then the ECHR, which is expected to take 2 years. If it goes against him in the ECHR, then he'll be extradited to the United States, where he'll spend 2 years fighting the espionage case. That's 6 years so far. Then the usual time for a case to get the Supreme Court of this particular nation is 10 years. That's 16 years. Upon that 16 years, that's now 30 years plus this 29 years, sorry. 29 years. The United States, in its generosity, offers Julian the opportunity to serve his sentence in Australia, if there is one. But every person so tried in the United States who's an Australian citizen can partake of that. It's a treaty agreement, so they offer nothing. The assurances that Julian won't be put into, what's it called? Florence, Colorado maximum security prison, Supermax, and he won't be put under special administrative measures. Special administrative measures, I don't want to involve you in it. I mean, it's a nice evening, but special administrative measures means that you're locked up all the time. There's a row in Florida, a row of them, 20 in a row. They have a steel door and then a wooden door, okay? These inmates have to yell, scream. Some of them have been in there 10, 15 years. They're mad. To communicate, they'll scream, bellow, and somebody will bellow back. The ones that have been in there a long time bellow anyway. So there's cacophony. This horrendous cacophony echoes up and down the corridor of these 20 SAM units, they call them, special administrative measures. Horrifying. But at any given time in the United States, there are 80,000 people in solitary confinement that aren't under special administrative measures. Why would you go there? You just wouldn't. So we fight. And actually, you know, fighting, AYW, that artist, you saw him on the screen there. I went to a jail with him to visit Julian. He's such a steady nerve. When people go through, there's 4 search procedures and 2 X-ray procedures and 4 body searches and a dog to get in. The dogs smell you and go in. I notice people, you know, they look around like that, you know, they display nervousness because they're in a really rough situation. People looking at there, you know. I mean, the searches are personal. They look in your mouth, look in your ear, pat you down, and so on, under the arms and under the other bits. I noticed with AYW, his nerve was steady. I said, you've been here a few times before or something, your nerve's pretty good. And he replied, the fight, John, gives meaning. And it's true. Us fighting here, just coming to the film is enough. But us fighting together gives meaning in 3 vital levels. You value Australian citizens. You value an Australian citizen. You display to the government and the bureaucrats that your concern for Australian citizens ranges above other concerns. It unifies us because we are Australians. And thirdly, we are foremost in the world. Julian did this. He's from here. He's not from China or sorry, that's pretty rude. He's not from, you know, London. is from here. And this was a world beater. And the people who established this grand movement which grew up worldwide are here. There's one sitting there, Tony. There's another one there, Steve. A worldwide movement grew out of these few people 3 years ago, with me wandering around with Greg Barnes and Andrew Wilkie and Peter Wish-Wilson in Parliament. In those days you could just walk around. Nowadays, of course, you have to have escorts and masks and all that sort of foolery. But yeah, that's what started us. It's a global matter and we put it together. I can't urge anything stronger than to give yourself a bit of praise. Anyway, I've said enough.
Beautiful. Thanks, John.
We are all Assange.